All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Rich Casual Business Academy. Super excited to have you guys here. Tonight, we are going to be talking all things credit. So, whether that is your personal credit or your business credit, we are excited to learn some new things. We will have some slides available for you guys. So if you want to take some screenshots, you can. I believe that we will also be possibly sending over the slideshow. And I'm also going to be adding in the comments the link to join our school community. But let's go ahead and get right into tonight's call. So Eddie, if you want to go ahead and hop on the call.
Yep. So, welcome everybody. So let's go ahead and talk about credit, right? So I know who I'm talking to in the chat. Go ahead and put a yes or a no if you currently have a personal or a business credit card. For me, it's going to be a yes. Got a couple on the personal side and probably about 8 or 9 on the business side. And the reason I state that is they're all for different reasons. Some of them have $1,000 limit. Some of them are unlimited, like the charge cards. Some of them I'm harvesting what they call gamification, and we're going to go a little bit into that, but I'm using the reward points for me, it's going to be for travels, for lifestyle type events. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and give you guys a couple tips on some credit cards. All right, here we go. We go present. All right, so credit conversations. A couple areas we're going to be talking about is fundamentals. So basically just giving a foundation of understanding credit, utilization. We're going to be talking about benefits, and then we'll open up the end of the call with some Q&A and some questions that I received through DM or, through the school community. So what is credit? Credit is an arrangement that allows you to borrow now and repay later, plus interest and fees. So those are two critical things that we got to remember, plus interest and fees. Credit also refers to borrowing, the borrowing history, and how you've paid those debts in the past. On the other side of that is there's business credit. So business credit is a measure of your own ability to pay bills, and it's not based on your personal ability to pay, but it's linked to your business. This is true even if the owner is a sole proprietor. So if you're driving Uber or you're doing a DoorDash and your business entity is structured properly, you got the capabilities, or should I say, you have the abilities to obtain credit. So couple fundamentals, account information. So usually at the very top of your statement, you're going to find all your account information, like your account number, opening, closing dates, statement period. This is where you're going to see the balance of your last statement, your current statement, and any credits or fees the account has accrued, and more. Obviously, you're going to see your payment info. That's where most people are familiar with. You're going to see everything related to your current month's payment, including the minimum payment due and the due date. My favorite area is always points and rewards. If you're using a card for credit card rewards, this allows you to earn rewards points, miles, cash back, and helps you kind of scale your lifestyle while being responsible with your credit card. Your credit counseling statement. So this is typically not on your statement, but in an event that you're not able to cover your bill, sometimes it's a good idea to call your credit card issuer and see if you could work out some type of temporary, like reduced APR, your annual percentage rate, or if you can get on a payment plan. A lot of times we forget that the relationship with our credit card is actually a financial institution. So I always say, keep a good relationship with your credit card institution. And they're typically able to waive like late fees or extend like payment dates if you have paid on time in your previous like 12 billing cycles. So basically a year. So if you've been on good terms, meaning you paid on time, you haven't had any late fees, typically they want to keep your business and keep your account in good standings. So a couple more key terms we talked about. APR, that's your annual percentage rate. That is the amount of interest that will be charged for carrying a balance month to month. Your annual fee is the amount of money that you are being charged for holding that credit card. This is separate from your interest rates. So the annual fee usually hits every year on the anniversary date that you opened up the credit card. And then your available credit. This is how much credit you have available to use. So if you have $1,000 limit, you have $1,000 to make charges and pay back before exceeding that credit card available credit limit. So I always ask, I had a couple DMs like, hey, I want to get a credit card. What should I use it for? So what is your credit goal? Is it to build credit? Is it to build your personal credit, or is it to build your business credit? Is it to earn cash back that can be returned to you in the form of a statement credit or cash into your personal checking account? Or is it to earn rewards points or miles? Those are things that are going to help you travel or upgrade flights. For me, it's going to be maybe a combination of both, of two of the three things. One is obviously on the personal side to help with to boost my personal credit. And on the business side, it's to help me leverage the rewards points to upgrade flights and travel a little more. So here's an example of what a credit card statement looks like and a couple areas that you want to pay attention to. So we mentioned your total balance. So I got a total balance of $5. This is off of one of my employee cards. They're very good about paying things off, and they have a balance of $5. This looks like a couple coffees, or this could be, running inside of the gas station and grabbing a couple snacks. We talked about the credit limit. That is something to pay attention to. So with a maximum of $2,000 credit limit, something that sometimes gets overlooked is your statement opening and closing date. So the next closing date for this particular employee credit card is February the 1st. So what that means is from January 4th till today, from January 4th to February 2nd, that is their statement dates. So they can make charges within that and making sure those charges are paid off prior to the statement closing date, not the due date. And we'll get into that a little later. As you can see at the bottom, we talked about APR, the amount of money you're going to get charged for carrying a balance month to month. In this particular example, you're looking at 25.49, and the V means a variable interest rate. So what does that mean? That means if you have multiple late payments, or if you have a problem account, which is deemed in their eyes, that 25.49 can go to 29.99. And with interest rates being a little higher these past few years, kind of the industry standard is about 26 to 27.99 for interest rates. So what does that mean? That means for every $100, there's going to be a 27.99% added onto whatever your balance is from carrying it from month to month. So here's where it gets a little confusing and a little tricky. There's two type of cards you can hold. You can hold the credit card. That's kind of typical of what a lot of people are used to. And then there's the charge card. So credit cards typically require, charge cards typically require you to pay the balance off in full, while credit cards allow you to make a minimum payment or more, and you can carry the balance over month to month. So what does that look like? Like an American Express, the green card I know is a charge card, the gold, the platinum, the black card, those are all charge cards. So what that means is when you go and make a purchase for your personal or your business, you would need to pay off that in full prior to the statement closing date. Whereas a credit card, you're making that same type of purchase of $1,000, and you get the ability to carry that balance over month after month. Now, what are the pros and the cons? The cons are, with the credit card and carrying a balance, you're going to pay that interest rate. And for the charge card, what are the pros and the cons? Well, the pros are it makes you be very responsible, because when you carry in a balance over on a charge card, typically the interest is very, very steep. So I personally like charge cards because it forces me to be responsible and pay things off as they post to the account. On the credit card side, maybe you got a 0% interest rate for 18 months. It might be a good idea if you want, you're going to make a purchase, a large purchase, and carry that balance over for, 18 months or 17 months and make monthly payments on knocking that balance down. So credit scores range from 300 to 850. It's calculated on factors like payment history, amounts owed, length of credit, and it's used by lenders to assess risk and risk management of lending money to you. And it's typically, like I said, it's a 3-digit code, right? So if you're in the 300s, chances of you getting a credit card are, is very slim, or you may have to get something that's called a secured credit card, where you put up, let's say, $500 and the financial institution issues you a $500 credit card. So a lot of times, I hear, hey, I've been making my payments on time, my credit score is not going up. That's where credit utilization comes into. So credit utilization is a percentage of your available credit that you're currently using. And it's important in determining your credit score, with the lower ratio generally indicating a better credit management. So I like to, recommend 10% or less of credit utilization. So if you look at the graph, this is how your credit score, we talked on the previous slide of credit being rated from 300 to 850. So this is how that credit score is calculated. 35% being your payment history. So your credit score is going to have an age. So say you have a credit score age of 15 years. Since you turned 18 or whatever that age might be, you've been able to establish credit. Now, over those 15 years, 35% of it is going to be your credit history. How have you paid things on time? What does that look like? Amounts owed. Now that talks about our credit utilization, right? So what do you owe? What types of debt do you have on your credit, right? Is that a home? Is it a vehicle? Now, if you have a lot of things of like retail consumer credit cards, you got a Best Buy card and a Macy's card. Those things are, those things really, credit issuers look at those things as you just getting credit just to get it. So it's not very favorable. Your length of credit history, 10% being new credit. All right, so how many times are you going out there and applying? And then types of credit. So here's one key where a lot of people are used to, hey, I know my credit card is due on February 3rd, but they don't know the actual credit card billing cycle. So the billing cycle is a span of the dates used to calculate your minimum payment. It's usually 25 to 31 days. So if you look at the graph down below, your billing cycle begins. And that's usually 30 days of how long your credit card charges and interest accumulate on one bill. And then your credit card statement closes, AKA statement closing date. Like in the previous slide, we saw that the business blue card that we have on the account closes on February the 3rd. Okay. And then usually 21 days after that February 3rd closing date, that is called a grace period. And that's when your credit card payment is due. So there's actually 3 dates that, you need to be aware of. So it may behoove you to take a screenshot of this just so you can stay on top of, your credit. Now, how does this impact your credit score? So the way your credit is calculated is actually calculated on the statement closing date, not the due date. So even though you're paying on time, you're still carrying a balance over, and your utilization is off the charts. So when your credit card statement closes, that is when, let's use Chase for an example. That's when Chase report to the 3 credit agencies. Eddie has, this balance. Eddie's credit card available credit is X, Y, and Z. And that's why sometimes, even though we're paying our bill on time, our credit is not reflected. Our credit is not going up. So so one thing to keep in mind is to pay off all your previous month's charges prior to the statement closing date. And if your statement closes on February 3rd, I like to say pay those charges off maybe 3 to 5 days prior to February 3rd. So you give it time for it to post to the account. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Rach for this last slide, but we'll head into the Q&A right after this.
Go in your crate now. Go in your crate
One
now.
second.
So if you're not a part of the community, I highly encourage you to join this school community. Let me know when you're ready, Rach. But this is a place where like-minded businesses are getting together and discussing topics like this. We're sharing a lot of insider information. So anyone, I had a school community member email me about getting a credit card that was could help them build their business, help them build their personal credit. So this is where I'm gonna be sharing personal links that I get from the different relationships I have. And then it's just a good community to be around like-minded people.
Excellent. Whoop. I got this new light, it just fell over. Thank you so much for that. That was awesome. So again, as he mentioned, we do have a school community. We have everything from content creation to understanding your brand's marketing, email marketing, everything that comes with that, building your foundation. We also go over just the basics. So understanding money, health, and wealth, they are definitely tied together. And then we have business funding, business credit, also lifestyle analysis. So not only can this help you personally, it can also help you with your business, whether you are running an LLC, an S Corp, whatever type of business it is. So I have posted the link for you guys to check out. There is a 7-day free trial that you guys can look into. We have live calls every Tuesday and Thursday that will also be posted, the recordings. But I would love to ask a couple questions and maybe we could see if anybody has any questions.
Definitely, definitely.
So I'll go ahead and start with the questions. And if anyone has any questions, if you guys want to raise your hand in the app, or if you want to type it in the chat, you could do both. Either or works really well. So you covered tonight just basically the basics. I think for me, the biggest thing that I think was never really taught, but is the 3 parts of a credit cycle. So when does the billing cycle begin? When does your billing cycle close? And when is the payment due? I know that one thing I think I only ever learned was when was the payment due. So I think that was really important to hear for me, was just kind of the 3 phases of your credit card. Judy has a question in the chat. She says, what is a charge card? Is it like a Home Depot card? She was late to the call. Are you able to just kind of really quickly recap what is the difference between a charge card and a credit card?
Yeah, definitely. So a charge card is a card typically, like when I say charge card, I want you to think of American Express. So you have your credit card, which is what it is. It's your Visas, your MasterCards. Those are typically the ones that we think of. Now, a credit card, you can carry a balance over month to month. So I go and I swipe $1,000 and buy a laptop on my credit card, and now I can carry that $1,000 balance over month to month. Obviously, I'm going to get hit with interest and things like that. Now, the charge card, I use my American Express. I swipe for the same laptop. It costs $1,000. And I need to pay that off prior to the statement closing date. Otherwise, I'm going to get hit with interest also, but the interest is enormous on charge cards. So charge cards are typically for people who are a little more advanced in their, credit card game, and who typically don't carry balances. So for like myself, I always use myself for an example. I use my Amex all the time. And then I'll give you a perfect example. Rachel was grocery shopping and she's like, hey, give me the platinum card or whatever she was doing. I'm like, And the reason I said no because the statement closed already and I needed that to open back up. So in that situation, I would give her an additional card or another card. Use this other card instead of, the charge card.
Awesome. And then to piggyback on that, is there an advantage for having a charge card versus a credit card?
So a charge card is actually really good if you're responsible enough. And what I mean by responsible, taking on a credit card is it's a big deal, right? So you got to have, you're going to be given a $2,000 limit, 5,000, 10,000, whatever that limit is. And you typically kind of don't have to pay it back on time, right? You can go delinquent, you can defer the payments. But with a charge card, it really forces you to be responsible. It really forces you to focus on, do I even have the cash to make these purchases? On the business side, a lot of people use a charge card because they're working off a net 30. So for myself, for an example, if I need to buy some supplies or anything, I may swipe the platinum card. I'm going to get, 5 times points. I might get, these different type of perks and credits, but I also know that one of my accounts will pay for that charge. So that's when it's a good example is, business. On the personal side also, are you responsible enough to not carry a balance? Credit card debt is ruining a lot of families. That's one reason I wanted to do this call, but also it gives you the capabilities of just having a little more flexibility. But with that flexibility comes being responsible, knowing you don't want to pay 30% on $1,000 charge.
Awesome. Thank you for that question, Judy. And if you guys have more, drop them in the chat. Dame, do you want to hop off mute and ask a question?
Yes. What's up, family? Did you hear about experience like being charged like they was doing fraud? People was clearing their credit and they was putting it back on their credit. And I seen a post someone saying like we should be disputing everything on there right now while they're in this lawsuit.
Yeah, so let's talk about disputes really quick. That's a great question, by the way. So there's a lot of misinformation on social media. There's a lot of credit repair, which it's not necessarily wrong or right, but it's a very I think Rachel has went through this process, myself also. So when disputing information on your credit report, the first thing I advise my clients, and keep in mind, I'm not in credit repair or credit solutions by any way, but as a general thought process, the first thing those credit card, or should I say those credit agencies do, is they look at your personal information. So if you have 4 names, your name is Eddie, your name is Eddie, your name is Eddie with Eddie. The first thing they do is look at your personal information to validate against the credit disputes. So you want to first have your name spelled properly. You want to have your current address. This is the address that you live in. Even when I started to dispute things on my personal credit, I had the address that my childhood address, which I hadn't lived there since 2001, right? You want to get rid of multiple phone numbers. You want to get rid of previous employers. So you want all your data current. And then the process of disputing items on your credit, it's nuanced, right? So you're sending in a letter, but you're sending it to all 3 credit agencies. And then at any time, they don't communicate with each other. So TransUnion is not going to say, hey, Dame and Eddie are disputing something. Let me send this dispute to Experian. No, what they do is they work independently of each other. So when you open up any kind of credit agency app and you say you see a 720, but you see a different score with, TransUnion, it's because the 3 companies, they work independently of each other. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, one thing I would say when it comes to credit is I do know that there is a lot of information out there, as Eddie said. It is definitely understanding the whole process. So, at the end of the day, there's Experian. I think one of the most important things that we can all do is understand, for example, if you're purchasing a home, which credit bureaus will even be checked. And at the end of the day, there is a game being played. As I always say, it's chess, not checkers, but it's a very long game, right? So I could say, well, I don't want to let them know about Experian, and I want to dispute, and I want to do all of these things. But at the end of the day, when everybody is playing the game, understanding commerce is a very deep study. That is just what I would say with that. I want to ask one question, and it's kind of just to go with Judy's. So you had shared a slide, and maybe you could pull it back up for us, but it was the utilization chart. And in the beginning of the call, you mentioned that you have multiple credit cards. And when you covered the utilization, it was the 10%. This is how they look at your credit, the 10% payment history. So Judy's question is, if I have 4 to 5 credit cards open, but they're paid off, what is that impact to your credit score? At what point do you close accounts? At what point does it make sense to keep them open? Does it make sense? And I know this could probably be a whole other call that we do, whether it be like maybe a subtopic of like the snowball or the avalanche effect of paying off your highest or your, things like that. But is there just kind of a response to that? Is, again, if you have 4 to 5 cards open, but they're paid off, does it impact your credit score, and do you keep them open?
That's a great question, by the way. Can you guys see the pie chart? You guys see the graph on the screen? Did that work, Rach?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so check this out. So part one of that question, and if I miss, just reel me back in. I have 4 to 5 cards that are paid off. Okay, so what does that do? That's length of credit history. That's going to be 15% of your credit score. So if your credit score is, let's say, 700, 15% of that is your credit history. Okay, they're all paid off, so I have a zero balance. That's going to be 30% of your amounts owed. But a credit card with a zero balance has no impact. So like I mentioned before, having a utilization of I usually say 9%. The industry standard is between 3 and 9. Typically having like a 3% utilization is like what, buying a coffee and paying it off. But you want to, if you have 4 to 5 open cards, maybe connect one to your Netflix, one to your Amazon Prime membership, right? So you're paying $19.99, which you're paying anyway out of your checking account, but maybe attach that to a credit card and put it on auto pay. Make sure that auto pay is 3 to 5 days before the statement closing date. So what is that going to do? That's going to impact your credit utilization in the amounts owed, length of credit, and your credit will slightly go up. So myself, for an example, I have 2 American Express. So I have American Express Platinum. I have the Everyday White. I have 3 Business Blue Card for employees. I have a Chase Business. I have a Chase Freedom on the personal side. I have a Bank of America Small Business. Now, do all of those have a balance on them? Yes and no. The American Express I use for travel and large purchases. I have a balance on that, which will be paid before the statement closing date. My personal one, my everyday American Express, that's for when I'm going to the grocery store. I'm accumulating points. So remember, I talked about have a goal set on what you're using your credit card for. So I'm using them for points and miles to upgrade my flights. My Chase one, I'm using those also. So there's stores that I go to like Costco. Costco doesn't accept American Express, so that's when I will go into the Chase ecosystem and use one of the Chase cards. But I personally am in the habit of, and Rachel tell you, I don't like to pay people, meaning I'm not going to owe you. I'm going to be responsible enough that the only charges I'm going to make are those that I want to, that I can pay off. So Rachel can attest to this. I'm not trying to carry a balance. I'm not trying to pay American Express or Chase 30%. I want to be the most economical and savvy around my purchases, and having the charge card and being in the American Express ecosystem, which it's a higher tier card. It does have a higher annual fee, but it keeps me honest in the sense that I'm not just going out swiping, buying this and that. We bought a PlayStation for the family, and I could have used any one of the business cards and kind of qualified it as a business purchase. But in my mindset, it's like, let's be strategic about this purchase. Let's do business and earn money, put it on the card and get points, and then pay it off prior to the statement closing.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. And again, if you guys have more questions, definitely raise your hand or put them in the chat. So I have a couple more questions. So as we know, we are working with a lot of business owners. And what would you say, why is building business credit separate from personal credit so important? And a second question to that is, when I want to get business credit, are they looking at my personal credit?
Okay, so let's take the second question first. So are they looking at my personal credit when getting a business credit card? Yes. So most businesses are in the startup phase. So kind of the rule of getting business credit is, if you don't, and they call it a personal guarantee. So in order to avoid the personal guarantee, businesses typically need to be in business for a decade and have over $250,000 in annual sales. So most startup businesses don't have $250,000 in the startup phase. So yes, they will do maybe a hard or a soft pull on your personal credit. But the benefit of that is, once they do that hard pull on your personal credit, when we looked at that graph and it said like amounts owed and the utilization, that's going to go towards your business tax ID number, not your personal social security number. And what was your other question? You said the benefits of...
Why is building business credit outside of personal credit? So I know that talking to a lot of business owners, they're utilizing a business bank account. I think that a lot of businesses are opening a business account, but they're using checking for their everyday purchases. They're using it, you mentioned net 30. You mentioned that most businesses operate on a net 30. So why is building business credit important from a business standpoint?
Right. So I like to think of it as, you're starting a business, and say you start a business with a business credit card, gives you $10,000 credit limit and 0 APR for 18 months. I like to think of that as some great startup cost, right? So now I can buy supplies for my gym and equipment and insurance all on the business credit card. And then I can work my way to paying that off prior to the 18 months 0 APR expiring. It also gives you a sense of comfort, right? Meaning that, most business credit cards, they have, return purchase protection, things like that. Cell phone protection, you might need a couple new cell phones for your business. But it gives you peace of mind in the area that you don't have to tap into your personal savings. And think of your business credit card as, someone investing into your business. Right? Maybe you don't have family that's gonna, invest into your business. You don't want to start a GoFundMe. A business credit card can be a good way for you to get startup costs.
Excellent. So I have just two more questions, and Judy had another one, so I'll tie it into one of mine. What would you say are the most common misconceptions people have around credit?
So the one I always hear is, credit is bad. And it's not that credit is bad, is that people with bad responsibilities and bad habits have credit. And then if we look at it, everything is tied to credit. The car you finance is credit. The house you live in is credit. Your cell phone is credit too, right? So that's one thing I would say is, people think, oh, I'll pay cash for everything, which you can, but if you have the ability to use a credit card responsibly, there's so many perks that come along with it.
Awesome. So on earlier, one of the slides that you talked about, and you've just kind of shared about it, is that it's really important to have a credit goal. One of those could be to build your credit. One could be to earn cash back, and one could be rewards points. Could you share with us what is the best way for someone to decide which type of card to choose? Is it by those goals? And then once they know their goals. So let me put a part two to that because I want to get to, and maybe this will kind of go together. So Judy's question, and I would really actually just love to hear your personal experience. So Judy's question is aside, do you take advantage of points for travel? So I would love if you could share why you have chosen the types of credit cards that you have. If we could just hear your point of view, like what was your credit goal? What was your credit goal? And what has your journey with utilizing business credit been like for you and your family?
Awesome, great question. So, do I utilize points? Aside, do I take advantage of points? So I have a couple credit goals. On the business side is to kind of, like I mentioned, the gamification. And it's not a game, it's being responsible, but that's kind of, in the industry, that's what a lot of people say, the gamification of points. So I'm using points for my everyday, I'm using credit or charge card for my everyday expenses. So there's certain cards that I have is that, I'm getting 4 times points on purchases at the grocery store. So I have to eat anyway. We have to buy groceries anyway. So why not get rewarded 4x points for every purchase? So if my groceries are $100, I'm going to get 400 points back in return. Okay, so that's on the business side. Also on the business side, I go to conferences. So I can swipe, I went to a conference in Phoenix. I go to, different type of things, travel that involved in that. So on the travel side, I'm getting 5 times points on purchases like rental cars, plane tickets, things that are in the travel ecosystem. Now, maybe you don't want to pay all of that at once. You use a credit card for that. I highly encourage, if you're on this call, you should be going to at least 1 to 2 conventions a year that are in your space. So if you're in the content space or, real estate or whatever that is, and it might make sense to use a credit card for that, right? So you can defer the payment for up to 30 days. And if you're using a charge card, same thing. You can defer the payment up to 30 days and pay it off before the statement closes. So in my personal life, my personal opinion, points have changed my life. So why do I use a credit card for most of my purchases? Number one, security, right? So if I have $10,000 in my account and I'm carrying my debit card, I essentially have $10,000 in my pocket, right? So number one is the security aspect. Number two is fraud. Anytime you're swiping in a credit card terminal, there's that time that, scammers can get you. With the credit cards, you're using their money. And when I say they have a great legal team for getting their money back, I've disputed multiple things that I've used my card for. And one thing they'll do is you'll get the credit before you get off the phone, and they'll do the investigation in the back end. Now with the points have, so what do I use points for? To travel. I usually upgrade all my flights to first class. I've been doing that for the last like 2.5, 3 years. Lie flat seats. The credit card or the charge cards have gave me access to lounges. I just went to 3 lounges in the last 4 days. I rented a car when I was out in Georgia. I got credit card protection. I didn't have to purchase additional insurance because the American Express Platinum is the insurance. So when you're having a credit card, you're kind of playing with house money. So you get that sense of like security, that sense of well-being, like, okay, I'm gonna use this card pretty much anywhere that is accepted. And I don't have to worry about, fraud or scamming. There's also purchase protection. So I go and buy a new laptop and it breaks, and maybe I've extended the 30-day warranty from, let's say, a store like Walmart or whatever store that might be. The credit card companies offer purchase protection on certain electronics and other goods you might purchase.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And to just kind of share an example. So I have two examples that I want to share when it comes to how he's talking about like the security. So if you guys have ever had fraud on your bank account, put a one in the chat. You call the bank, you know it's not you, and you feel like you're in the FBI interrogation room because you got to prove to them that it wasn't you, and it feels yucky. Like one, you've been violated by the person that's committing the fraud, and two, you're being violated because you have to prove it's not you that committed the fraud. And I've actually had bank fraud done to me quite a few times, and it's very unsettling. So when it comes to, again, just that protection, right? So two incidents I want to share with you guys is that I was recently in Canada, and the way that they do gas out there is that you have to prepay. And I remember I used my debit card and I filled up the gas, and I was like, okay, that was $60. Cool, no problem. And I get home and I check my bank account, and there's a charge for $178. And I'm like, I called the bank right away. Why is there a charge for $178? And she's like, "Oh, well, in Canada, you prepay up to, so you can fill up to $178." But the reason I share that is because, thankfully I have that income where it was in my bank. But imagine again, if I'm somebody who, again, I just used my debit card, I just used the money that I had, and now I was out, even though like that's $118 higher than what I had actually purchased. And guess what? It took, I think, almost 3 to 5 days of the pending charge to hit. Now, I want to share another example of using the credit space. And so I remember a couple years ago, we had gone shopping at Trader Joe's, and Eddie had come home and he was a little frustrated. And he was like, I know inflation is high, but I got the same groceries we always get. And look at our grocery bill. It is so high. So I'm like investigating the grocery bill because I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And he's like, yeah, and when I was at the grocery store, the teller was kind of yelling at another teller. Well, the guy ended up charging us for 22 cucumbers instead of two. And that was again over like $100 or something in cucumbers. And because it was the credit card, Eddie was able to call the credit card company, and like he said, we'll issue your. And here's the thing, like you do there is levels, right? So they'll be like, Mr. Witt will issue you your credit right away, and they're gonna take care of it, right? But it's again that feeling of one, the Trader Joe guys totally again violated me because he charged me for all of these cucumbers, but now I got to prove to my bank, I got to drive back to Trader Joe's, like all of these things. And then also just again the travel. So I think it's really important for everybody to establish what your goals are, again, whether it's to build credit, whether it is to like he mentioned, we are a family that travels. And so when you do look at the cost of the particular card that we do have, it gives you lounge access. Well, as a family of four traveling, Eddie was in the airport the other day and he was like, dang, like pistachios are like $18. Okay, well, let's take into account the cost of the card. So I think just overall for everybody, it is important to, one, establish what your goals are when it comes to credit, whether that be your personal or your family, is one. And then just also, again, making sure that, you do understand your behavior. So last question is there a point where I know personally it's easier to say you do not have credit card behavior? I don't suggest you getting a credit card because that could be the person that, again, they're not consistent. It's the pay the minimum, they have the card forever, versus like a business. Like I know we're again all business owners. Like what would you say is everybody's next step? Like, is it number one, establish your goal? Number two, do they reach out to you for what cards you suggest? What type of research? Would they know the type of card that they should get? What do you suggest there?
And so the first thing I'll suggest is getting your personal credit in order. So if you have a 320 personal credit score, which no one on this call does, but I just like to joke. If you got a 318, you ain't in no position to get anybody's credit card. Okay, so you want to pull your credit, and I'll be sharing a link in the school community for you guys to pull your free credit report. You get one free credit report annually. But you want to pull your credit card and look, pull your credit and see if there's anything that sticks out. Number two, you want to come up with a credit goal. So is your goal to build your personal credit? Is your goal to build, business credit? Is it to earn cash back? Is it for points and miles? Like I said, for me, it's building my personal credit, and it is points and miles harvesting, right? So tell Rachel, I'm out of here. I got a business trip. And the first thing they say, are you flying first class? Well, with the points, I get the ability to fly first class. I flew last year in August to Atlanta, then to Dallas, and I spent $5.60 and 30,000 points for a first class lie flat seat. And a lot of people thought they're like, there ain't no way you're spending $5. And the $5 are, you're paying your TSA fees and federal taxes and things like that. Where are you flying? Vegas? I had to prove that I was actually flying domestic cross country, right? Also using points. There's flights where you can fly to Europe for 30,000 points. So what does that mean? I see Tiff and Dame. So what that means is maybe you have enough points to buy one ticket and one ticket on points. And now you got an extra, let's say, $800-900 to spend when you get to Europe. So that's one of the benefits I personally like about rewards points. Rachel tells me, she's like, oh, I got a trip coming up. I'm like, okay, let's make it happen, right? We'll use points, we'll get you there, and you'll have a great time. But without the points, it's still capable without the points. It's just not as fun. And then
Awesome.
so, let me tap in. So I
Yeah.
got a text when I was in Florida. I got a text that said, would you recommend opening a credit card for gas, groceries, or business events? Or should it be for larger purchases? And then my reply was, are you trying to build credit? Are you trying to use it for points or cash back? So just to let you guys know that I'm actually, what I'm talking to on this call is exactly what I tell clients. And they replied, build credit. And then I said, okay, are you ready to pay the charges as soon as they post? So now we're talking about not carrying a balance, right? Getting in the habit of paying prior to the statement closing date. It takes a lot of discipline to not carry a balance. They replied, it said, I know that I can. It's another level of responsibility, and it's something that I thought about. I replied and I said, I know you can do it. I just want to make sure I'm setting you up. If that's the case, I would say yes, get a credit card. And then I have a link, a relationship with Chase. So I told them, let's get hooked up with a beginner card. And that's one thing I always tell people, where are you at in your credit journey? Right. I also had a client I spoke with a month ago in New York, and she tells me, I want to get a black card. Well, you have a business that is not businessing. You're not making black card money. Also, did you know that there's a $10,000 initiation fee for a black card? Also, did you know there's a $5,000 annual fee? So every year on your anniversary date is $5K. Also, you got to be spending upwards of $250,000 to get a black card, and you got to get invited. So you can't just go apply. You can't be a person with money. You got to have a relationship with American Express. So yeah, that's what the last minute, questions. Make sure you come off mute right now or drop them in the chat.
That was awesome. Okay, so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to do that? Do you have a discovery call? Do you want them to join the school community? How do they get in touch with you?
So what they could do is they could always go on my Instagram, Real Life Movie, and click one of the links. There's a free discovery call available. I would say for the school community, those are going to be for people who are in that community. And I'll be sharing like the relationship links I have to like Chase Freedom, American Express with, I know I have a link for the gold card, 160,000 bonus points after you spend $6,000 in the first 90 days. I'll be sharing things like that. But if you're just, if you want to see where you stand in the credit game, hop on my Instagram, shoot me a DM, or just book a free discovery call. But I think for the school community, there's a lot of value in there. That's going to be a place where, this slideshow will be. It's going to be a place where I share a lot of the more higher level links. And it's going to be a place for business owners who are serious, about scaling their business and finding funding.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, you guys. We will see you in the school community. We also have our next call Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we will see you guys later, and thank you guys for tapping in. Bye, guys.